Good day, students. In this clip, we're going to be going over how to complete the square. So before we take a look at an example, let's go over the basic idea behind the whole algorithm or process of completing the square. Let's take a look at a completed square. So a completed square is of the form a square plus, I'm going to write it in a slightly different form, a times 2b plus b squared. All right? This is a complete square. It is also known as a perfect square trinomial. The unique thing about this formulation of a trinomial is that it factors nicely into a plus b quantity square. You can use the factoring by grouping method along with the x game to factor this trinomial to get this factored form. But there's a neat little shortcut that you can use to convert a perfect square trinomial in expanded form into its factored form. So what you do is you simply take the square root of the first and the last term, and then you bring down the sign that comes first, and then you get the factored form a plus b quantity squared. Okay? Let me show you another perfect square trinomial, a squared minus a times 2b plus b squared. Now, what's the factored form of this? Applying this same procedure, you take the square root of the first and the last term. This is a shortcut. Bring down the middle sign, and then the factored form will be a minus b quantity squared. So we can see that the factored form of this perfect square trinomial is a minus b quantity squared. Okay? So what is the whole idea of completing the square? Well, let's write this square in its incomplete form. What if you have a squared minus a times 2b, so times 2b, and you were asked to find the term that should be added onto this incomplete polynomial expression to make it a perfect square. So we know that b squared is the term that makes this a perfect square trinomial, but what if we didn't know what this term is, as we will be doing in our upcoming examples? How do we find the third term that makes an incomplete square a complete square, or a perfect square trinomial? So the main formula you want to remember anytime you are completing the square is b over 2 square. Okay? B over 2 square completes the square. Now recall b is basically the number that you're multiplying the first degree variable by. Okay? The second degree variable. So if you have x squared, whatever the coefficient is in the middle, that is what b is going to be. So in this problem, we have a lot of variables going on here, so it might be a little bit complicated to see. In this problem, you have 1 as a, okay? And then b is basically 2b. Let me write it in another form so it's obvious for you to see what I'm doing. So I can rewrite this as a squared, 1 times a squared, since there's no number there, minus, what are we multiplying a by? That's the coefficient. We're multiplying a by 2b. Okay? 2b times a plus dash right there. So we know that multiplication commutes, right? There isn't any particular order for multiplication. So we can write it like this. So now we can clearly see that the coefficient of a squared, this is a, and then the coefficient of a is 2b, and this is going to be our b. All right? So let's do b over 2 squared. Let's apply that formula to this expression right here. We're going to have b is equal to negative 2b. Always have to take the sign. Divide that by 2. Divided by 2. That gives us negative b. And then what do we do? Remember, you divide it by 2 and square it. Okay, so we square this. When you square negative b, you end up with b squared. So if I add b squared here, I have a perfect square trinomial, like I have up here. So b over 2 squared is what helps you complete the square. All right, with that in mind, let's take a look at an example. The instructions, actually two examples. The instructions are as follows. We're to find the value that completes the square. Then we're going to rewrite the complete square or the perfect square trinomial. Write the perfect square trinomial as a perfect square. Okay, so question number one, let's take a look at the expression r squared plus 6r plus blank. So this is an incomplete square. We want to complete this square or convert it into a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to use the formula we talked about earlier, b over 2 square. So what is b in this problem? Well, let's find out what a and b are. The coefficient of r squared is 1. So we can clearly see that a is 1. And then b is the coefficient of r. Okay, notice how the degrees are in descending order. You have to put it in descending order first before you determine a and b, just like you're trying to do the quadratic formula. All right, so b is 6. What do we do with 6 to complete the square? We divide it by 2. 6 over 2, which is 3. And then when you square that, you get 9. So what do we have now? If I add 9 here, this incomplete square is now complete. So r squared plus 6r plus 9 is a complete square or a perfect square trinomial. All right, so 9 is a term that's to be added. Now to factor it or express this in perfect square, we just take the square root of the first and the last term, bring down the middle sign, and our factored form will be r plus 3 quantity square. Okay, that's a factored form, and 9 is a term that we add to make it a perfect square trinomial. All right, let's take a look at another example. This one will involve fractions. What if we had, for number 2, let's say we have x squared, x squared minus 2/3 x plus blank. All right, so what are we going to, what do we have to add here to complete the square to make this a perfect square trinomial? We're going to use the same formula. We're going to find b over 2 squared. That's what you need to add to create a perfect square trinomial. All right, so in this problem, what is the value of b? Let's go ahead and write out our coefficients. The coefficients of the square term, the first degree term is a. So that's a right there. This is a. And then b is going to be the coefficient of x, or the first degree term. All right, so our b is negative 2 over 3. So what do we do next? We divide this by 2. So how do we divide negative 2 over 3 by 2? Well, since the numerator is a fraction, we can express the denominator as a fraction also. So to divide is the same thing as to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. So we're going to multiply negative 2/3 by the reciprocal of 2 over 1, which is 1/2. All right? So these two 2's divide out, and then you end up with negative 1/3. Now, after you have b over 2, you have to square it, right? So if we square negative 1/3, what do we get when we square negative 1/3? Minus square is positive, so we're going to square the top, 1 square, and the bottom, 3 square. 1 square is 1, 3 square is 9. So 1 over 9 is a term that makes this a perfect square trinomial. So we add 1 over 9 here. Now let's factor this using our factoring trick. So let me rewrite our perfect square trinomial. The perfect square trinomial is x squared minus 2/3 x plus 1/9. Now to factor this, we're going to root the first and the last term. And we're going to have also, do not forget to bring down the middle sign. All right, so bring down the middle sign. And that's going to give us x minus 1/3 quantity squared. Now, how did we get 1/3? What I did is let's see, if you're taking the square root of 1/9, let's do that over here. Using the properties of radicals, you can break it down into the square root of 1 divided by the square root of 9. Okay? Square root of 1 is 1, square root of 9 is 3, so 1/3 is going to be your answer. So this is the uh, perfect square trinomial written in a perfect square form. And the term that completes the square is 1/9. All right? So that's that. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. Do feel free to subscribe to our channel for updates to other cool clips such as this. And please post a comment to let us know what you think about this clip. More clips can be found on mathgoodserve.com. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day.